The steppe does not forgive silence, it absorbs it. On the vast Pannonian plain, where the grass runs unbroken to the horizon and the sky presses down like a gray iron lid, a man can disappear without the land so much as flinching. No chronicler stood witness, no court scribe marked the hour. What survives in the scattered fragments of Jordanes and the careful observations of the Byzantine diplomat Priscus is only the cold outline of what happened. That Bleda, co-king of the Hunnic Empire, rode out and did not return, and that his brother had seen to it. Welcome to Portraits of the Past, where we explore the lives of those whose legacies continue to echo through time. The year was somewhere around 445 CE. The exact method, the precise location, the last words spoken, all of it consumed by the silence of a world that kept few records of its own violence. But the outcome was written in the architecture of what followed. Within months of Bleda's death, Attila stood alone at the summit of the most feared military power on the Eurasian continent. The co-rulership, the shared throne, the fraternal arrangement that had governed the Hunnic world for over a decade, gone, erased as cleanly as footprints in wind-driven grass. To understand what Attila did and why it mattered, you must first understand what he destroyed. The Huns were not an empire in the Roman sense. They had no walled cities, no census rolls, no senate deliberating in marble halls. They were a confederacy of nomadic and semi-nomadic peoples, bound together not by geography or ethnicity alone, but by force of personality, by tribute, and by the gravitational pull of military success. Their political structure was layered and fractious. A king at the apex, beneath him a constellation of subordinate chieftains and client peoples, many of them Germanic tribes absorbed into the Hunnic orbit over decades of westward expansion. The whole edifice held together only so long as the man at the top could project absolute authority. Weakness, division, the appearance of internal disagreement, these were not political liabilities. They were existential threats. When the Hunnic king Rua, sometimes called Rugila, died in 434, he left no clear singular heir. His nephews, the sons of his brother Monzuk, would inherit jointly. Attila and Bleda, two brothers, one throne. The arrangement was not unusual by Hunnic standards. Rua himself may have ruled alongside a brother for a period. Co-rulership allowed the Huns to manage a sprawling, fractious domain. One brother might oversee the western reaches of the empire, the other the eastern, splitting the administrative and military burden of controlling territory that stretched from the Rhine to somewhere deep in the Pontic steppe. In theory, it was pragmatic. In practice, it planted the seed of every conflict that would follow. Of Bleda, we know frustratingly little. He is a shadow beside the sun of his brother's legacy. What Priscus recorded of the joint reign suggests Bleda was a genuine co-ruler, present at negotiations, commanding forces, a figure of real authority within the Hunnic world, not a ceremonial stand-in. There is an account, likely apocryphal but telling in what it implies, that Bleda kept a Moorish dwarf at his court for amusement, a figure named Zurkon, misshapen and absurd, who had been brought west as a curiosity and installed in Bleda's hall as a kind of living jest. Priscus, who later visited the Hunnic court himself and recorded what he witnessed with the precision of a man who understood he was watching history, noted that Zurkon's mere appearance at feasts, his gait, His garbled speech, his borrowed armor fitted to a body built for ridicule, was enough to set the Hunnic nobility into fits of laughter. Bleda roared. His chieftains wept with it. Attila did not laugh. He sat at the head of the feast, iron-faced, and watched, not with contempt for the dwarf, with something colder, with the focused stillness of a man whose mind was elsewhere, calculating, turning over distances and numbers and the geometry of what an undivided empire might achieve. While the hall shook with laughter, Attila's cup sat untouched. His eyes moved across the room, not at Zircon, but at the men laughing at Zircon, reading them, measuring them. A feast for Attila was never only a feast. It was intelligence. That detail, one man still in a room convulsed with laughter, may be the most precise portrait history has left us of what separated the two brothers. Bleda enjoyed what power had given him. Attila was thinking about what power had not yet given him. And ambition for Attila was not a quality. It was a condition. The decade of joint rule had not been idle. In 435, both brothers met Roman envoys at the city of Margus, or near it on horseback in the Hunnic fashion, because Attila and Bleda would not dismount to negotiate, and extracted a treaty that doubled the annual tribute Rome paid to the Huns, secured the return of Hunnic fugitives sheltered within Roman borders, and guaranteed Roman merchants equal trading rights. It was humiliation dressed in the language of diplomacy, and Rome swallowed it. Because the alternative was worse. The alternative arrived in 441. When Rome violated the terms of the Margus Treaty, sheltering Hunnic defectors, allegedly permitting the Bishop of Margus to plunder royal Hunnic burial mounds across the Danube, the brothers rode south. What followed was not a raid, it was an erasure. Nisus was one of the great cities of the Roman Balkans, the birthplace of Constantine the Great, a fortified administrative center of genuine strategic weight, ringed with walls that had stood for generations. The Huns took it apart. Siege engines, a technology the Romans had not expected nomadic cavalry to possess or deploy, were brought forward and operated with a competence that stunned the defenders. The walls did not hold. When they broke, the killing was systematic. What Priscus recorded years later when he passed through the region on his diplomatic mission to Attila's court was a riverbank still thick with human bone. The city had not been looted and left. It had been depopulated. The survivors who were not killed were taken, and the structures that remained stood as monuments to the cost of Roman breach of contract. Other cities fell in the same campaign: Singidunum, Sirmian, Viminatian, a string of Roman settlements along the Danube reduced to rubble or tribute. The Eastern Roman field army was met and shattered in open battle, twice. The road to Constantinople was not quite open, but it was visible. Both brothers had led this campaign. Both had witnessed what Hunnic force, fully committed, could accomplish against the greatest empire in the Western world. The Eastern court, trembling and bankrupt of military options, sued for peace and paid a staggering indemnity: 6,000 pounds of gold to settle arrears, and 2,100 pounds annually thereafter. Rome had been made to pay for its own humiliation. Attila had seen what was possible, and he had seen what a shared command cost him. At some point, the sources place it around 445, though the precision is contested, the brothers rode out to hunt. This was not unusual. The hunt was the grammar of Hunnic masculine life, The same horsemanship, the same reading of terrain, the same controlled aggression that made Hunnic cavalry the most feared in the world was rehearsed and refined in the pursuit of game across the open plain. A hunting party moved fast and spread wide. It fragmented by necessity, each rider following the arc of his quarry into the long grass and the broken ground beyond. Men disappeared from one another's sight for hours at a time. The steppes swallowed them in ones and twos. Bleda rode out. The grass closed behind him. Whether Attila was close when it happened or whether he had arranged it through another man's hand, the sources do not say. What they say is that Bleda did not return. Jordanes, drawing on sources now lost, states plainly that Attila killed him. The hunting accident framing clung to the event across centuries, not because it was convincing, but because it was useful. A death in the field required no tribunal, no accusation, no division of loyalties among the chieftains. It simply was. The steppe had taken him. These things happened. No revolt followed. No coalition of chiefs rose to demand justice for the slain king. The Hunnic court absorbed the death and continued. This, perhaps, tells us more than any detail of the killing itself. It tells us that Attila had already done the political work before the deed was done, that loyalty had been built or bought or coerced, that the men who might have objected had already calculated the cost of objection. The silence that followed Bleda's death was not grief. It was recognition. Attila was now, without qualification, the singular ruler of the Hunnic Empire. Every chieftain answered to him alone. Every tribute stream flowed to a single hand. Every military decision passed through a single will. The fractured geometry of the co-kingship collapsed, and what replaced it was something the Hunnic world had rarely, if ever, produced. A monarchy in everything but name, concentrated in a man who understood with extraordinary clarity that power undivided is power absolute. Rome had been watching. Both Romes, in fact, East and West, Constantinople and Ravenna, had been watching with the careful attention of men who understood that a dangerous animal had just removed the one constraint on its behavior. They were right to watch. They had not yet begun to understand what was coming. The paint is dry on this chapter, but the archives are vast. Subscribe and return to portraits of the past. The next exhibit awaits.